One of the easiest ways to break working software with AI is to ask it to improve something it doesn't yet fully understand. You show it the part you want changed. It sees the problem. And within seconds, it's ready to start building. But it may not know what already works. It may not know what other parts depend on it. It may not know which decisions have already been made. And it definitely shouldn't be guessing which parts of your product are safe to change. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I audit a project before I let AI start implementing anything. By the end, you'll have a simple 5-question check you can use before your next build to work out what already exists, what is working, what is actually missing, what needs protecting, and what the safest next move should be. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do with an AI builder, is tell it, don't change anything yet. So let's make this practical. Imagine you've already built part of an app. Users can log in, they can create a job, they can see their jobs, and now you want to add a new feature that shows which jobs need attention. Now, it sounds straightforward. You can open your AI builder and say, add an urgent job section to the dashboard. And maybe it will do a good job. But before I let it touch the project, I want to know what it's actually working with. Because the feature I'm asking for doesn't exist in isolation. Maybe the dashboard is already using a shared job query. Maybe job status is calculated somewhere else. Maybe another page relies on exactly the same data. Maybe there's already a priority field that we could use. Or maybe there isn't. Maybe there's an old one that isn't used anymore. We don't know yet. That's the point. So, before implementation, I want to turn those unknowns into facts. That's what I mean by an audit. An audit doesn't mean spending 3 days analyzing every line of code. It means looking at the part of the system you're about to change and establish enough truth to make a safe decision. And I use 5 simple questions. What already exists? What is working? What is actually missing? What must not change? And what is the smallest safe next move? So let's go through them. What already exists? First, look before you add. This sounds simple, but AI makes it incredibly easy to create new things, new fields, new functions, new components, new workflows, new ways of doing something the project might already know how to do. So before I ask AI to create anything, I want it to inspect what's already there. Using our example, we're aiming to show what jobs need attention. So I want to know, how are jobs stored now? Where does their status come from? How does the dashboard currently get those jobs? Is there already a priority field? Is there already some logic that decides what needs action? I'm not asking the AI to change any of it yet. I'm asking it to map what exists. Because one of the worst outcomes is building a second version of something that already exists. Now, you've got two ways of calculating the same thing. Two sources of truth. Two places that can drift apart later. So the first rule is simple. Before you add something new, find out what already exists. What is working? The second question is just as important. What is already working correctly? Because working software deserves protection. If users can already log in, don't treat authentication as part of the new feature unless the evidence says it needs to change. If jobs already load correctly, don't rewrite the job query just because we're adding a new way of displaying them. If the existing data model supports what we need, don't change the database because a different structure looks cleaner. This is where AI can sometimes tempt you into unnecessary work. It might say, I can refactor this while I'm here. Or it would be cleaner if we change this structure. Maybe, but clearer isn't automatically safer. And the new feature isn't permission to redesign every part it touches. So I want to identify the known good parts of the path. These are the things I want the AI to treat carefully. Sometimes I will explicitly say, this is working, do not change it unless new evidence proves it is part of the problem. And you can let me know at that point before the change. That's not limiting me. That's letting the AI know what it needs to do. That's giving me a clear boundary so it can work more intelligently. What is actually missing? Now we get to the gap. This is where we need to be precise. Because there's a big difference between I can't see the feature I want and I know exactly what capability is missing. Let's go back to our urgent job example. Maybe at first I think we need a new priority system. But after the audit, we discover that every job already has the information we need. Maybe the data is already there. The dashboard simply isn't using it. That's a completely different problem from what we first maybe thought could have been the problem. Or maybe the dashboard is already receiving everything correctly, but the UI isn't showing it. Again, different problem. Or maybe we discover that the system genuinely has no concept of urgency at all. Then yes, something new may need to be designed at that point. But now we're making the decision based on what we've seen, not because the first idea sounded right or what we think may be right. This is why I like asking what's actually missing. Not what do I feel like adding, because the answer should determine the layer we change. And this is very similar to debugging. The visible thing you don't like isn't always the place that needs changing. We want the first real gap. What must not change? Now we protect the rest of the system. This is one of the most important questions I ask before implementation. What is outside the scope of this work? In our example, maybe login isn't working. Login is working, don't touch it. The jobs database structure is working. Don't change it unless the new feature genuinely requires it. Job creation is working, leave it alone. The customer facing view isn't part of this change, don't modify it. Now the AI has a much clearer workspace. We're no longer saying improve the job system. We're now saying here is the specific area we're investigating, and here are the known good areas that are not part of this change. Yeah, that dramatically reduces the number of decisions that AI is being asked to make for us. And there's another benefit. If the AI discovers it cannot complete the work without touching one of those protected areas, I want it to stop. Not quietly expand the scope, stop and tell me. Because the new information changes the decision. Maybe the protected area genuinely does need changing. That's not the problem. But now I get to approve that wider change with evidence in front of me. The scope doesn't silently expand just because the AI reached a difficult part. And then we get to the final question. What is the smallest safe next move? This is where the audit turns into action. Not what could we build? What is the smallest change the evidence supports? Maybe our audit shows that all of the job information already exists. The dashboard already receives it. We simply need to display one existing status differently. That's good, that's great. That's a small change. Or maybe we discover that the information exists in the back-end response, but never reaches the UI in the shape we expect. Now we have a different next move. Or maybe the audit shows that the capability genuinely doesn't exist anywhere. Then we don't immediately build it. We move into design. What should the new contract be? Where should that logic live? What should it return? Who should be allowed to use it? The audit tells us what kind of work comes next. And that's an important point. An audit doesn't always end with, now change the code. Sometimes it ends with, we need a design decision first. Sometimes it ends with, we need more evidence. And sometimes it ends with, actually, we don't need to change this part at all. That's a successful audit. Because the goal isn't to create work. The goal is to make the right decision. So let's bring the 5 questions together. Before I let AI implement a meaningful change, I want to know what already exists. What is already working? What is actually missing? What must not change? And what is the smallest safe next move that we can make? That's the pre-build audit. And here's how I would actually use this with an AI builder. Before implementation, I will give it the goal we've already defined. I would give it the trusted project context we've already grounded. And then I would say something like, do not make any changes yet. Inspect the relevant part of the project. Tell me what already exists. Tell me what appears to be working. Identify the exact gap between the current state and the outcome we need. Identify the files, components, or contracts that should remain untouched. Then recommend the smallest next step supported by the evidence. If you find conflicting information, or if the change needs to expand beyond the expected scope, stop and tell me before implementing anything. This is much closer to how I want AI working with me. Not, here's the problem, go fix it. But here's the goal first, show me what is true. Then we decide. And that's really the bigger loop engineering lesson here. AI is fast, that's useful. But speed is most useful after we've pointed it in the right direction. I don't want AI creating a new data model before checking whether the existing one already works. I don't want the AI rewriting authentication because a page behaves strangely. I don't want it replacing a working component because another design looks clearer. I don't want it expanding the task without me knowing. So before the build starts, inspect first. Protect what works. Find the real gap. Then make the smallest justified move. And here's the practical thing I want you to take away from this video. Before your next meaningful AI change, don't begin with build this. Begin with don't change anything yet. Then ask these 5 questions. What already exists? What works? What's missing? What must not change? What's the smallest safe next move? If the AI is unable to answer those clearly, you're not ready to implement yet. Okay? Keep investigating, because the safest change is usually the one where you can explain exactly why that part and not everything around it needs to move. And now we've reached the important point in the series. We know what we're aiming to achieve. We know what information we're willing to trust. And now we've audited what actually exists before changing it. The next step is design. Before we let AI write the implementation, we go to define how. How the parts of the system should actually behave together. So in the next video, we're going to talk about contracts. And I'm going to show you why you don't need to be a traditional software architect to define them clearly.